Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Today is Wednesday, September 17th, 2025. I slept through last night after the blood draw, which is a rarity. Feeling pretty good today, whatever. Let's get into the stuff here. So, this happened. Let's just get into it.
We now know the charges against Charlie Kirk's alleged killer, as well as the key evidence against him and the death sentence he could face if convicted. We also heard him speak during his video conference court hearing late today.
Are we ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
What the hell is he wearing? Like a flap jacket? Like, what is...
Calling case 251-403-576, State of Utah versus Tyler James Robinson. Could you state your name?
Tyler James Robinson.
Help me! Help me, I've been framed.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Robinson.
Well, the 22-year-old said nothing more. He showed no emotion and little outward expression as the charges were read. Aggravated murder, felony discharge of a firearm, 2 counts of obstruction of justice, 2 counts of witness tampering, and the commission of a violent offense in the presence of a child. The aggrieved murder
What? Jesus.
charge is a capital offense, as trial judge Tony Graff explained.
The defendant knowingly created a great risk of death to another individual other than Charlie Kirk and the defendant. Notice conviction of this offense may carry the death penalty or pursuant to Utah Code 76.3-207.7, a mandatory term of imprisonment for life without parole or an indeterminate term of not less than 25 years.
Well, the judge appointed.
Okay, so look, I don't know. The kid didn't sound like a sociopath, right? When he said his name. Like, he didn't sound somebody who's, like some evil piece of shit. Sociopath. And he just got told he was either going to get the death penalty or life imprisonment without any possibility of parole. So his life is effectively over. Doesn't look like he'll do well in prison, especially since there are probably a lot of right-wing prisoners who will be not that happy to have a guy in there who murdered Charlie Kirk and lived with a transgender dude. It's a right-wing state in Utah. I don't know what their prison system is. I don't know what kind of prisons they have. But he's not going to do well in prison for, 60 years or whatever it is, right? He's talking about 50 years in prison or the death sentence. Now, he might be heavily medicated, but other than that, you think he'd have some sort of like reaction, just in being calm and staring, like this is just some scene in a movie, that he's not really, trained to act in. There should be some reaction, right? Like there should be, oh my God, I fucked up, my life's over. Like he's already been convicted. And so, let's get into the rest of this stuff here.
Attorney to represent Robinson. He also granted a pretrial protective order for Charlie Kirk's widow and set the next court date for the 29th. It capped a day that began with prosecutors sharing new information on the case, including a series of text messages between Robinson and his roommate, who, according to court documents, is transitioning from male to female, and authorities say they are also romantically involved. Now, prosecutors say these messages were sent after the shooting on September 10th. Quoting now, "Drop what you're doing, look under my keyboard." Authorities say his partner found a note that Robinson had left, and it read, quote, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it." More text messages now in response to that note. Prosecutors referred to the partner as the roommate. The roommate said, "What? You're joking, right?" Robinson, "I'm still okay, my love, but I'm stuck in Orem for a little while longer yet. Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but I gotta grab my rifle still. To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I'm sorry to involve you." Robinson's roommate, "You weren't the one who did it, right?" Robinson, "I am. I'm sorry." The roommate, "I thought they caught the person." Robinson, "No, they grabbed some crazy old dude, then interrogated someone in similar clothing. I had planned to grab my..."
All right, so that crazy old dude is some guy who stood up and said, shoot me, and then turned out to have he had pedophilia, child porn, child pedo stuff on his phone. So like that, which is weird itself, but
rifle from my drop point shortly after, but most of that side of town got locked down. It's quiet, almost enough to get out, but there's one vehicle lingering. Roommate, why? Robinson, why did I do it? Roommate, yeah. Robinson, I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. If I'm able to grab my rifle unseen, I will have left no evidence. Going to attempt to retrieve it again. Hopefully they have moved on. I haven't seen anything about them finding it. And then later, prosecutors say, Robinson's partner asked, quote, how long have you been planning this? Robinson, a bit over a week, I believe. I can get close to it, but there's a squad car parked right by it. I think they already swept that spot, but I don't want to chance it. Robinson, according to prosecutors, later wrote, delete this exchange, adding later, Robinson, don't talk to the media, please. Don't take any interviews or make any comments. If any police ask you questions, ask for a lawyer and stay silent.
Okay, so, the guy all of a sudden cares about not getting caught, right? So here's the thing. There is a trail of evidence for all of these types of, events. With this single lone shooter, they find the guy within a couple days, a week for Luigi Mangione. So there's a trail of evidence that the guy leaves behind, which they present to you. Now, like with everything else, it only works if you trust the people gathering the evidence or the media, right? Or, everybody involved in this thing. So these text messages can be sent. And if this guy's sending them, right? If he's sending this exchange or, he's just an actor and they have this, this interaction, right? And so you have the local police and the FBI and they find these things and they don't properly vet them. They don't look very deep into it. They just accept it on face value. If they're not in on it already, like certainly the supervisors, the other people are like, yeah, don't ask questions. Just, this is the information. So they gather the information and there's a trail of information that's left by this guy or the CIA. And if nobody looks into it, nobody asks questions, this doesn't add up, this kind of thing like that, it gets passed over to the media. And the media just accepts it without looking into it. This doesn't make sense. Let's go deeper. Let's interview the guy, right? Like if they had, did you ever see these guys ever interviewed? They're usually dead. But if they're not dead, was Luigi Mangione ever interviewed? Because in the interview process, things wouldn't add up, right? So if you're a person who trusts the law enforcement to do a good quality job and look, into something, even if it doesn't add up, which never happens in these cases, like they're just railroaded through, they're just pushed through. And if you don't trust the media to look into it and ask the questions that needed to be asked, not accepting everything on face value, then it's hard to believe in these things because it just doesn't make sense that this kid did it, right? Like, these kids these individual lone gunmen all do it successfully, but always leave behind a trail of information and have no sense of self-preservation, right? And so, by this text message exchange, why is he telling this dude, his transgender lover, this now and not for the past week? Because he's now trusting this other person to keep his mouth shut. And he's leaving evidence of basically a confession. There's a confession right here. And so if he told the transgender person a week ago, that transgender person would be convictable, right? Would be convicted, would be an accomplice. And they don't want that. They want this transgender person to look good. The powers that be. But they want the right wing people who hate transgender to, and hate, gay dudes and these things to, and the liberal people and that what they represent. They want them to be like targeting transgenders and gays and guys like this and, whatever, for their outrage, right? They're Charlie Kirk people. So they want to create division. They want to make this other guy look like a hero for ratting his lover out. That's why they structured the narrative this way, right? So this is a structured narrative. And again, if there's no trust between you and the people running the justice system, and there's no trust between you and the media, then the story just doesn't add up, right? And you can't prove it because there's no opening of the chain of custody of the evidence, and there's no these, they just put all these things out, and it's, he's confessed right here. And so you either believe it or you don't, and you don't really get any sort of other second opinion. And you never get to know this person as a person. Now you can look into their life, you can do a deep dive and look into their family and say, well, this, this is just not existent, but it's not going to go anywhere. The people on the internet will be like, wow, this is fucked. Like you guys, we all who don't believe in it, but what can we do about it? Like, it's not, this guy's already pled guilty, and he's, he's going to be convicted. It's going to go quick unless they want to have a long, drawn out trial. But they don't want this guy appearing on camera because if you see him as a person, you would know he couldn't possibly do this. A lot of these people they get are just young, dopey kids, and they're not really capable of the crimes that they are acting for. And, who knows if he goes to real prison or he's a CIA asset. They grab him, whatever it is, right? I mean, maybe they just do a human sacrifice and kill him. And, whatever it is. And he's like, hey, shit, I didn't think that you guys were going to do this. You promised me something. They can tell him anything, right? You take the fall for this and whatever. They have these assets, these people that can be used in these stories, whatever. Endless supply of crisis actors, people who are, mind control people, whatever it might be. We know that there's been an emission of mind control programs and things like this. They could just take somebody out of, one of these, they have these assets and just use one. Or a couple of them, you say Charlie Kirk was an asset and, whatever, and they don't care about killing people. They have no, moral compass. But anyways, it just comes down to whether you believe in the people, and some of us don't. We don't believe in the media to do their job. We don't believe in the powers that be in law enforcement, to fully vet all this information. It's just been given to them. This kid said this, and they're not questioning whether there might be something behind it, right? There might be a deeper, nefarious plot here to, put this kid, railroad him through the justice system, and then just, hey, look, he's guilty. We done it. We got this guy, and then the left can, do whatever they're going to do, and the right can be mad at a guy who's been indoctrinated by the left. And for the remedial, stupid minds that accept this, who don't look any deeper than what they're told by the media and the government, it's fine, right? It's easy, it's convenient, you have resolution to the whole thing, and then they can move on to whatever else. But to the rest of us, we're like, yeah, we don't believe you. Like, you guys, this doesn't, and then it just becomes like a free-for-all of trying to come up with what you think really happened, based on your indoctrination, the lens you view the world, right?
A lot to get to in the hour ahead. Starting us off tonight, CNN senior national correspondent Ed Lavandera is at the UVU campus in Orem, Utah, where
Okay, so the other thing I want to say about this is, this evidence is whatever evidence. Like this, they have the evidence that supposedly is left behind by the kid. They have DNA evidence on the rifle, and then they could have, if this kid's a controlled asset, then he could write these things. The roommate's a controlled asset. They're all part of a, like a whatever thing it is. And then you never hear of them. Like, you're just, like, you think Luigi Mangioni's in prison. Like, that's the most recent guy. But is he, though? Like, is that even his real name? Like, is that, what is the backstory and how does it hold up? And it just it blows by you. Like Luigi Mangione was a story for like a week. When there was a manhunt, he got caught at McDonald's. He went in, there was a couple of, news stories about him pleading not guilty or whatever it is. I think he's got a trial coming up. But it's, the story's basically over. Like, people have forgotten about it. We have such big stories all the time. And so, like I said, you're never going to get the answer because the official story is this. And so you either believe in the official story, you don't. And more people don't believe in the official story, but the people who don't believe in the official story, a lot of them believe in even worse, stupider fucking bullshit disinformation narratives. And so, there's nothing you can do about it. Let me switch over to this Candace Owens things here.
Well, it's going to be a heck of a Tuesday for us, guys. Where should we begin? I'll tell you this. Something is not right. Something is not right. And I am going...
Okay, so in my video yesterday, I talked about how her and all these people, if you're calling bullshit on the official story like I just talked about, you don't believe the official story. And you see a pattern. And they've created this profile of angry young dudes who are, easily radicalized, who are great at getting off shots and, like the guy who allegedly assassinated Trump. But they have no real personality backstory. They don't develop any real kind of thing. Oh, this is a quiet kid, right? So this is what you know about this kid. He's a quiet kid, so nobody knows anything about him. He's quiet and introverted, whatever. Was living a very normal life. Like, this is what we know about this kid. Very normal life. Then he ends up finding out he's gay sometime. Not much story about that developed. And he finds the one transgender dude in Utah. And they hook up. And he's, gay and dating a transgender dude. And he starts watching Charlie Kirk because, like he's got it. Like he can't do anything else. There's no other way to spend his time. And he, thinks Charlie Kirk is hateful towards him and his lifestyle. But, not anybody else in Utah. There's nobody else in Utah that is against his lifestyle. Not anybody in the Mormon religion, not anybody in his family. Charlie Kirk is the only guy who, and it's not Ben Shapiro, not any of these other people. Charlie Kirk is one guy who hates transgender people and gay dudes, so much so that he's got to kill him. Like nobody else. Charlie Kirk is the number one transgender hater. None of these other people hate groups, none of these other people that are around there. And so he decides to climb up on a tower and shoot him in a crowd of other people, maybe hitting a kid, maybe, like they said, endangering minors. You don't know where the bullets are going to end up, right? But he makes a pretty perfect shot, a kill shot into Charlie Kirk's neck area where, he bleeds out. And so that's the story that you have, right? That's the story that you're given. And so all of us who know that these things don't add up, then the people involved in every level of this thing, Charlie Kirk's wife, who she praised, for her god-awful eulogy thing that she did. A couple other videos came up with Charlie Kirk and his wife. One other video I saw last night. And they're answering questions. And she seems much lighter. In fact, his wife in the other venues in that reality TV show, she doesn't seem like the woman who gave that fucking that actress. She's much more, authentic in these other things. But she handled it really poorly. Like, she didn't do that very well. And they didn't give her time to grieve properly. They wanted to strike while the iron was hot. And it came off really shitty. And a lot of people, went, what? Like, why are you being like this, right? Because, she's given some kind of a script to read to go along with its official story. But all the people, Trump, J.D. Vance, all the people, Tucker Carlson, all the people in the media, all the people involved in this, they are willfully ignoring how fake this is. Just like they did, like Candace Owens did. She didn't call bullshit on the fake Trump assassination. And so you can't be believable now, right? because Trump's assassination was so fucking fake. And so none of these people wanted to say anything about Trump. RFK Jr., so everybody who went along with that, and they all know it's fake. If I know, they know. Jesus Christ. You have to be brain dead. They're involved with it. And so they all know it's fake and they're going along with it, so they're all compromised. So you have nothing, right? And she's going to say something really stupid here. So I said, she was saying there's things wrong about this that don't add up, and she wants to, implicate Israel in some way, which may or may not be true. It's at least, very plausible. But, you have to go after everybody else. It's not again, people are like, oh, it's the deep state. No, it's the whole state. It's the whole country. It's the whole everything. But here she's going to say something really stupid.
To need you, whoever it is that's listening to this podcast right now, to wake up. Because I am telling you, this is not a battle between left and right. We all thought that at some point. We believed that. You're my enemy. You're my enemy. It is not a battle between Russia, Ukraine. I don't care what your political issue of the day is. What is happening right now in the world and what just happened to my friend Charlie Kirk is a battle of sheer evil versus goodness.
You got to be shitting me. So to those of you who listen to this on the Journey series, I am going to a voiceover after Candace Owens just said that what happened to her friend Charlie Kirk and all of this is, it's not a battle between the left and the right. It's not a battle between all the, whatever they're telling you it is. It's a battle of evil, sheer evil versus goodness. And so it's the stupidest thing ever because evil's fucking won, right? If you're saying Charlie Kirk being assassinated is evil and evil's going to get 100% away with that. Like it's getting away with all this stuff, right? Everything that's happening. I mean, she says to everybody, wake up. You got to wake up to this, reality that this is a battle between sheer evil and goodness. Well, evil's fucking won. By your definition, evil has won. Because, if it was a battle between good and evil, between God and the devil and, these things, God would give you a chance to win, right? You would get a chance to win. There'd be a pathway to victory. And all these dopey motherfuckers out there, starting with the Shill Alex Jones and these other people, is, this idea that getting the information out is somehow winning. That bringing the evil to light is somehow winning. To a limp dick, impotent group of people who can't do anything. We have no way of doing anything to stop any of the things that are happening. The only thing that we can say is have a YouTube channel or someplace on the internet to say, hey, you guys, that's talking to the evil guys. Hey, you evil guys, we know what you did and we know you got away with it and we know that you did these things and we know it and this is how we know it. Here are our facts. And then, say it to a bunch of other people who go, yeah, it's right. Yeah, we got you guys. And then nothing happens to them. They get 100% away with it. You don't know who did it. You see the people like, AOC, and you see the people like, the news media people, and you see the, Trump and Biden. But who are the people making the calls behind the scene? And even if you named a few of those people, you named their names in a video. No one, it doesn't matter. Those people are not going to suffer fucking anything, right? They're going to get away with, like, if you're saying that Charlie Kirk was murdered by some evil cabal and the official story is not true what happened, the kid isn't guilty, the kid that they're convicting, which is, yeah, okay, we can all say that's what it looks like. I mean, sure, I agree with that. And that's it. That's all you got. Like, you got that you're being lied to. The official story is a lie. But then what's the truth? Is Charlie Kirk still alive? Was that some kind of, prosthetic on him? Fake blood, like Trump, and Trump's fake assassination attempt? Was there a group of people behind it? Was there a real assassination? And that's what Candace Owens is probably hinting at, but she's not going to come out and say that. There's no evidence, she says. She says there's no evidence. She thinks it's Israel, but there's no evidence. So are you going to get the real shooter and the people that ordered the shooter, the people that planned this? Are you going to find out every person, every name? You're going to get it. You're going to find out exactly what fucking happened, right? This is what sucks about the truth community. Let's say you find out exactly what happened. Let's say somebody gives you a folder of the whole thing, the whole plot. That somebody sends you a file, drops you a thumb drive, and you're like some, independent journalist kind of person, and you get it, all the information. You just go through it. You say, you have all of it. It tells the whole story of everything that happened, and you post it, on YouTube or whatever it is, and the media will ignore it because they have to. They'll just call you crazy conspiracy theorists and whatever, if they even have to talk to you about it all. So the media's ignored it. So all you have is your show, and other people will pick it up. Then there'll be all these other people saying you're full of shit, this information's fake, all these things. There could be alien spaceships up in the sky, and people would be like, oh, those are holograms or whatever. Like, you could throw like rocks and hit it, and it'd be like, oh, that's a real spaceship up there. People are like, no, it's not, fuck you. So, and even if everyone in America believed you, let's say your thing went viral, and 100 million people in America, like 1/3 of the population, even, let's say, 150 million, 180 million people, 1/2 of the population, or more. Let's say 60% of the population, whatever it is, 200 million, something like that. Watch your thing, and they believe it. They think you got the real story, and if they don't accept official story, it still doesn't matter, right? Let's say the government has to respond, and they just give you some patsy, some whatever, and they give you a secondary lie or story. They blame it on some, deep state lie, whatever they do to, it's just a secondary story that they give. Like if they had to do that, they probably didn't have to do that, right? And nothing changes. And so by those definitions, evil has fucking won. Because you, as goodness, like she's saying what goodness is, the good people who are looking for the truth or whatever, don't see through the bullshit, stuff that we're getting from our system. The good people are completely denuded. You have nothing. You have no recourse. There's no path to justice. There's no path to accountability for the people that are doing this shit. And so, and by that definition, by every sense of that definition, evil has won. Right? That this is pure evil, and evil has taken over, and good can't do shit. Like the people that are thinking of themselves as good. And so, you think God would do that? You think God would not give you one avenue in which to win? There wouldn't be some pathway that good could outdo evil. There's zero pathway to victory here. I've been doing this for years. The people are too stupid. I mean, dumbed down. That's why you have to say, wake up. You're saying, wake up. Candace Owens is saying, wake up to her dopey audience that's already thinking of themselves as truthers, because they're not listening to the mainstream media. They're right-wing dopes who listen to Candace Owens. But she didn't say wake up when it was so obviously a faked assassination attempt on Trump. It was a WWE event. She was endorsing that piece of shit, just like Tucker Carlson, all these other people, all these, Charlie Kirk and the rest of them. They didn't say wake up to that. No, that was real. Trump's fucking ear that didn't bleed, and the story that he told, that maxi pad he wore after he had a non-cut on his ear that he showed to Joe Rogan, and there's no scar, and his doctor said it was smaller than 2 centimeters. He didn't need stitches, but he wore a fucking maxi pad and rolled out Hulk Hogan in that fucking, retardathon, right? He's fucking, I mean, just fucking, just so bad, right? That dumb fuckathon. I was saying dumb fuckistan, and people are like, I'm going to steal that, and, whatever. A lot of people commenting on dumb fuckistan. I didn't say it. Somebody said that to me as a comment. I read it. Like somebody said, I lived in dumb fuckistan. It was one of the comments, it was the goofy, hostile comments I read from time to time. I got a few I think I'm going to read now because, my videos got a shit ton of views, and there weren't any dopes. I didn't get any dopes that were commenting. There's, like, the videos are getting way more views now, the Charlie Kirk videos, which is weird because I don't know anything about it beforehand and wasn't interested in covering it. I thought I was going to say a few things in one video. It was not the focus of the video. I was giving my opinion about it. But the videos, there was just all this interest in it, and then I started looking into it. It was just one of these things. But, it's getting more views. And the percentages of my videos are usually about 98% approval, which I don't check, right? Because I have to scroll over. Like because of, being older, I have my, to read the comments, I have to make YouTube bigger. And so the video, 93% likes to dislikes in the video. Breaking Erica Kirk was on an elitist reality TV show. But no negative comments. Then the thing yesterday was 95%. And 97 and 93. But normally my videos are between 97 and 99% positive. Up to down ratings. So there's more people who are giving it thumbs down. But I'm not getting a lot of comments, and I'll read some comments in a bit. But the majority of people agree with whatever I'm saying here, right? And there is a number of people in America now, and I bet it's 40%, 50%, 60%, 70% don't believe the official story. Whatever they hear from the media and the government, they question to some extent, like not to the degree other people do, right? And it's isolated to, like, Charlie Kirk thing is questionable, but Trump's thing isn't, right? Like this dope Candace Owens. But so in that, you have people who are saying, well, the government is fucking lying to you about a guy getting killed. So they can kill you. They can kill somebody, fucking murder them, and then present a completely fictitious narrative. Like, how many people think this kid actually did it? Like, I wonder, they don't do polling. They'll never poll on something like this. But let's say it's 20 to 30% of the population, right? Things that the government, not just the government, like the amount of people that have to sign off on this. Okay, so Trump's assassination attempt was obviously some poorly executed WWE style event, right? All the Democrats didn't call bullshit on it. Like, Trump is in the middle of an election, and the Republicans are about to have their convention, the Trump convention. And the centerpiece is Trump walking out with this maxi pad in his ear. And people like someone as dopey as Stephen A. Smith said, oh, yeah, Trump just won. After him, pumping his fist in the air after, he put some ketchup on his ear and saying, all the stuff he said, fight, 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 remember? He's such a pussy, right? And not that I don't value violence, but he's, like, he acts like a tough guy. He's not, right? I'm not saying being a tough guy is a good thing. It's not. Being, sensitive to other people and having a good heart is like a feeling heart, a caring heart is like, to be braver than being a, violent, whatever it is. But Trump wants to pretend to be that. And he's shown over the years that he's clearly not that guy, right? But he gets up and pumps his fist, and that was badass. People who were like that guy, Iyengar, that guy from Young Turks said, I hate Trump, but that was badass. Like, liberals were saying that. And it was so fucking fake. Nobody called bullshit on it. Nobody in the liberal media. I mean, even, I don't know what kind of liberal truther people are out there, but nobody called bullshit. And then the whole truth community, if this was Joe Biden, they would have said, oh, this is fake as fuck. And they sat on their hands and they just took it. And it supported him and talked about how badass it was. I mean, I couldn't fucking believe it. Like, viewers were coming to me and saying that, right? So, wake up. Candace Owens is telling people to wake up. But what's she saying when Trump's fucking fake assassination? She's friends with Trump. Trump gave her some love, and Tucker Carlson and them. She's disagreeing with him on Jeffrey Epstein, his handling of it. But, then he's evil now. Like, then you have to fucking turn on Trump. Come out and say, Trump is complicit with this thing. He's gaining an advantage because of Charlie Kirk's assassination. And he's, hiding his exposure on Epstein. And so, this idea that it's good or evil and that you're on the good side because you call bullshit on, a small percent of the bullshit. You're calling bullshit on Charlie Kirk, but you're not calling bullshit on Trump. And, you're calling bullshit on the right wing stuff. The things that the left wing does. The things that the right wing believe in, because your audience is right wing. So you got to fucking pander to those motherfuckers. You can't kind of tell them the whole truth. She said it's not left versus right or liberal versus conservative. It's good versus evil. No, it's not. So here's the thing that I'm going to tell you that none of these motherfuckers will. I don't think anybody else says this. And it's the absolute truth. And it's, not going to make me popular. I don't do any of this shit. I can't do it. Like, people want to be heard. Viewers want to be heard. Like if I did one of those live things where I suck at, it would suck. It would be horrible because I suck at it, right? I'm much better if I'm just, by myself and I don't have any outside influence. These video clips that I respond to, but it's me having to, whatever. One of my dogs is sleeping on my bed right now, and I'm in a room by myself. But if I had other people in here, I wouldn't. My thoughts, my ability to like channel this information or whatever it is would be less good. And if I had to respond to comments, like people are commenting and calling out people for donating money and all those things, and having multiple people around me, producers and people, interviews, whatever, like I would be distracted. I wouldn't be able to give you, the pure information that I'm able to get into a comfortable situation and just, shut out the outside world and allow the information to flow through me and see things in a very clear manner without the distortion of seeing it through other people's lenses who are in the room, who are part of a conversation, right? Because when you're in a conversation, the other person's distorted lens, their distorted worldview affects you. And so you have 20 people with all different distorted views, and you are connecting with their energy and their consciousness. People, even when you're not talking, people are radiating their consciousness, right? If an angry person walks in the room, in a short period of time, everyone else is angry. Like you're fearful. Like you feel other things. People are, it's permeable. You're on a spiritual level, so you are affected by the people around you. If you're in a crowded mob and the mob goes apeshit, and you just get swept away. Like if you're in a concert and everybody's swept away by the music, and you get into this state of consciousness, right? You go to a really good, sermon in church, or a really good baseball game, be a football game or basketball game or something, and it's just the whole crowd, and it's like an amazing experience, and it's like, you just watch something incredible, right? Like if somebody elevates their, the concert or the sermon or the sporting event into a higher level, and the crowd the crowd is all in this euphoric, group egregore, this consciousness, and so we're always connected. So, but just to, connect to divinity and then have I have some pattern recognition, these other things, but all this stuff is fairly obvious. So this isn't a battle between good and evil, because our whole civilization, our whole way of being, is 100% focused on materialism. Spirituality has been snuffed out as best as they can, because there are some people who just need a connection to God. And even with a shitty religion, because our religion, the religion of our domination in this country, but all the religions, have been compromised, and now no longer connect people to God, but actually prevent people from being connected to God. So our religion sucks. And it's mental, and it's monetary, and it's social, but it's not a vehicle in which you can connect to God. Like you can go to church and be a really devoted person, and through the power of your devotion, you can connect to God. But it isn't because of and you can have a great pastor, somebody who's really sincere about connecting to God, but he's doing that despite his shitty religion. You have a really good priest who's not a pedo, who really is connected to God. I knew these nuns that used to come to my mom's. My mom used to have these prayer meetings at our house, these charismatic prayer meetings. She was Catholic. And there was these nuns, and one of them was very spiritual. They called her Sister Saint Anne. Everyone knew that she was like a saint. She was from Lithuania, but she had come over when she was a kid. She had a little bit of an accent. And she was just like one of these people that radiated God. Like I was like a 13, 14-year-old dope, and I could see it, right? Like she was just really a spiritual person. And there's some other nuns. There's one that was kind of feisty. There's these 4 nuns I used to be like friends with. And so, and they weren't as spiritual, but they became nuns for whatever reason. Who knows what? But they had some, there was something there. Like, nuns have gotten a bad reputation of being abusive in schools and slapping your knuckles with rulers. And, there were some nuns that I saw in one of those, Tyler Sheridan shows, and they were really abusive to the Native Americans. And all that stuff happened. But there are people who sought God that end up being a religious person. But a lot of them aren't. A lot of them are creeps and people who are, whatever. But it's despite their religion. The religion isn't good at connecting to God. It's a piece of shit religion. And it's not a reflection on Christ. Christ was great. Christ was great for the people, for the culture he grew up in, and the people he was surrounded by. He elevated himself, not to the highest level, but to a higher level. And it's, it's kind of an achievement what he did. But, he couldn't bring the dopes along with him because, people are fucking degraded and people just love to go to the lowest common denominator. And I've explained why in various videos, but it's just the way it is, right? And so, this idea of this Candace Owens and people are putting out there that this is a battle between good and evil. And you just happen to be on the good side, the people that believe what you believe. But we're not. We're all connected to a system that is making us all worse. You can see it with each generation. Like each generation is worse than the last. And the technology isn't helping. Screens aren't helping. The internet isn't helping. They're great, right, for information, but we're getting worse as people. People are just weaker and more pathetic, more entitled, more disconnected. Mental illness has gone way up. Suicidal. Like how many kids are on ADHD? How many kids have ADHD? Every fucking one of them? Like if you bring a kid in to get counseling, they're going to get diagnosed with ADHD. It's almost a certainty. And 60% of kids are depressed. And so there's no good versus evil. This is an evil system. The system is taking us in the wrong fucking direction, and the evidence is overwhelming. And, our technology is better, and we have more sophistications in various ways, but people have been degraded and are like less, are less than what we were before. And each technology, think about what AI is going to do to these kids. You're hemorrhaging abilities. Before I had a phone, and many of you guys who grew up, you younger people who grew up with cell phones and GPS, I would move to an area, and I've moved many times. I have a good memory and I have a good mind for such things. I was good at geometry and these things. And so I was able to make a mental map, of the place I lived in. And you memorize all the roads. So, you would know what roads went to what, how to get on the highway. And you would drive around and very seldom would have to look at a map. And you know how to go to places. Like within a couple of years, you knew your way around a city, a whole area. And, occasionally you'd have to ask for directions or, specific things. But you knew how to get to, you only needed partial directions because you had a mental map of the place. And then there were some new roads you had to add to your mental map. And then GPS came, right? And, I was when I was living with my ex, her brother had gone to Harvard, and he came over, and I only met him a couple times. He was really smart, like one of those really high IQ people, and he went to elite university, but he's using his phone, and GPS didn't work where we lived. We lived on a farm, rural area, and I gave him very specific directions. I'm like, take 3 rights, and then your GPS will work. Just take 3 rights. But he didn't listen, right? So he went and used his GPS, and I'm like, never go down a dirt road. Because there were some fucking dirt roads you were never going to come back from. And he went down a dirt road, he got stuck and whatever, and he figured his way out. But he was a really smart guy, but he was already, I didn't have a cell phone at the time, right? But, he had already lost those abilities because he had been, he he was a fancier person with a, better, job, whatever it was, whatever he was doing. He was, he had the modern day technology of a cell phone. And then later on, of course, I would get cell phones. And now I'm not using that ability anymore to make a mental map. And I know the local roads now because I've just been conditioned. But I know young people, they just don't, because they don't look at it, because they have a phone. Just tell them to do this, tell them to do that. And then now with AI, I mean, it's going to tell you brush your teeth and, do your hygiene. Like, that's what's going to happen. You're going to have this little, imaginary buddy that's going to monitor your shit and going to relay all the information back to the powers that be. And this guy's keeping up with his hygiene because you don't make decisions anymore. You don't think for yourself. And so we've hemorrhaged abilities, the technology, and there's so many ways that we're weaker. So I think, most people can see that our society is not a good one. And so the idea that the good people in society could overwhelm the bad people in society and somehow divinize this system and save it from its inevitable collapse is silly, because we're all compromised, right? And all of us do not want to give up certain things, whether they're good for us or not. We all have our things, our comforts, our addictions. I mean, how many people want to give up hot water? How many people would not want to have hot water in their house? To wash dishes and take baths and showers and, all the ways that you're cold and you come in for the cold, you take a hot shower, or whatever it might be, you're stiff and these things. Or just water in general. Like, imagine if you had to go outside, indoor plumbing, like just if you had to go outside to an outhouse at fucking 11 o'clock at night and you live in a place where it's 20 degrees out there or below zero. You have to go outside to an outhouse and the first thing in the morning, right? And no water. You have to pump the well, for water. You have to break the ice, whatever it is, right? You have to, imagine not having water in your house. These things, right? So, those things are necessities. Imagine if you couldn't turn the thermostat on and your house was just either really hot or really cold all the time. And your body, had to adjust to that. Like any number of things, going to the grocery store, being able to drive, right? Having a car. So there are things that like that. And then there's other things that you enjoy on the internet or TV or whatever it might be. You like shopping on Amazon or whatever your things are. And so you don't want to give those things up. So you don't want to admit that this society and our culture sucks, because there's some great things that you enjoy on a material level, but those things are ripping you away from your soul. They're taking you away from, the comforts that you have, the addictions you have, the pleasures that you have are keeping you from your soul's path. They're distracting you from your true purpose here. And it's making you weaker. But you are all addicted to something. So, you get silly motherfuckers out there in the truth community, and Candace Owens is just the person that I'm picking on today. Not picking on, but pointing out. That think the system can be made good. And it can't, because the very premise of the system is based in a debt-based economy and a pleasure-based lifestyle, where you are pursuing pleasure every day. And that is not a realistic goal, the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of happiness. Because what they don't tell you is the only way that you can be happy is if you're sad. That you have to be sad some of the time. You have to be miserable some of the time. And then the happiness stands out. If you're happy every day, then you don't feel happy, because that's your permanent state of being. So it's the pursuit of happiness. Because people aren't happy. There's some people who are more happy. They have more serotonin than other people. They're just naturally more happy. And there's people who have less who are depressed, more people who are depressed. But either way, it's not a real goal. It's not, your soul didn't bring you to planet Earth. God didn't put you on planet Earth to be happy. The evidence is overwhelming. Happiness is not the point of your life. Your life isn't about pleasure. Your life isn't about happiness. And so you have a spiritual goal. And you have things that you have to get through. Miseries is divine blessings is one of the maxims in the Sage Park meditation. There's things that you have to get through to, move forward in your life and your spiritual life. And so our whole society has warped people, disconnected them from their spiritual side, and given them artificial goals like being rich and famous and getting more money, getting more whatever it is, power. And none of those things make people happy, or none of those things are real. And the more you go against your soul's path, the more diffuse you become, the more depressed you become, right? So the whole society, when good wins, when God wins, right? And God is always winning. When this society is thrown into the dustbin of history, right? When this whole culture, there's no such thing as America. There's no such thing as England or Israel or, Canada, South America, Venezuela, whatever it is, the Congo. When all the countries have disappeared, whatever their names were, whatever the governments were, whatever the world culture is, and the lifestyle disappears. And when we're doing something else, the debt-based economy disappears, which is evil, a usury economy based in debt. And then all the commercials that bullshit you by luring you in with sex and, pleasure and chocolate and, sweet candy. And, we have these binge mechanism in our system that whenever you have access to fat, because fat in nature doesn't exist like it does now. We have a lot of artificial fat, like the cows that we eat. They're way fatter. They have much more fat and less dense muscle fibers than what you would see with a natural cow. The animals, these domesticated animals, produce fat, lay eggs, like abundance of eggs, 5 eggs a week for most of the year. These egg-laying chickens. Usually they'd only lay eggs in their season, wherever it is, right? Maybe it's a long season, they go through a couple of broods. But the sweetness, if you eat natural fruit, if you chew on a sugar cane, like the cane itself, it tastes kind of sweet. It's kind of cool. It's not like candy. You have to squeeze out the sweetness in it, like a sugar cane press, and then you got sugar water. I have one, by the way. I used to make this sugar cane juice. It's amazing. I had it in India, and so we get sugar canes and press it. And we'd put ginger and lemon in it. It's amazing. There's a time I was in India. I was at a gathering. It's 110 degrees, and I was just getting sugar cane, and these cups of sugar cane, 6 ounces a cup, and I just could get back in line. I just loved it, and I'm not a sugar person. I don't really like sweets, but it had ginger and lemon in it, and it was cold, and it was 110 degrees outside in India, and I'm like, fucking, I think I have a problem. I was so wired. But, you have these things, the binge mechanism, that things that are sweet, and they've learned how to make artificial sweetness, corn syrup and, the sugars that we eat and all the things, all these artificial sweeteners. And they don't exist in nature, and they represent energy. And fat, there isn't a lot of fat, like we know about, you drink milk as a baby. But then, creatures, you look at natural animals, and they're all gamey and wiry, and they're not, maybe they have fur, but if you see them when they're wet, like you see a dog when it's wet, or like a wolf or whatever, and they look really small, even a bear, they don't have a lot of fat, right? So there isn't a lot of fat out there. And of course, sex. There's a great video about this called The Great Porn Experiment by Gary Wilson. But you have these binge mechanisms in your system, and it's, this is where you get addicted to things. And nature has made it that, oh, wow, there's fat, go eat that shit because you need it. Oh, there's sugar, go eat it. Like you just, so, oh, there's sex, oh, go have it, right? And so you've got these binge mechanisms that are overwhelming. The sexual one is really overwhelming. The urges to procreate for the obvious reasons. Because if there wasn't an urge, people wouldn't do it, right? Like if you realize what it's like to raise kids, if you knew what you're getting into, like you'd never do it if it wasn't like overwhelmingly, this overwhelming urges and things, and it gets perverted. We see that now how it gets perverted in people. People like Jeffrey Epstein and these other people, or people who are obese who can't turn off the need to binge, right? And so the people have these deficits inside their persona because they're not living natural lives. And they try to fill this deficit where it's, they want God's love. They want to connect to God. They want to be in, human relationships, but they can't because everyone's so fucked up and they're lonely, and they get addicted to shopping. They get addicted to these things, this binge mechanism, right? And so it's this society that is this culture that has taken human beings in the wrong direction. It's an ungodly system that doesn't have God as its base. It's not based in divine principles. It's based in manipulation and pleasure and psychological manipulation and using your weaknesses to, perpetuate these things and dividing you into these groups of left and right and Republican and Democrat and men and women and gays and straight and, all these various groups, right? They want to divide you into something that you're focused and create hatred in you, which distracts you from connecting to your soul and becoming what you're supposed to become. They want you to be, pleasure-based and fearful and hate and angry and, all these things. Anything but the truth. This system should be called anything but the truth. So when you have an evil system with good things in it that seem good, but overall evil system that's taking you away from your soul's path, which how many people are on their soul's path? If you're going to be honest with yourself, are you on your soul's path? Do you know other people they're on their soul's path? They've connected to their soul, which takes effort, and they're connecting to God every day, and they're thinking about when they make a decision, is this a part of my soul's path? Is this a part of what God wants me to do? Like how many people actually fucking do that? You think, what percentage? Less than 1%, right? And so if you have a system that takes you away from, you're born into this world, your soul created your body for a purpose. And God has created you for a purpose. And if you don't find that purpose, then you're fucking, you're on a demonic path. You're not on your divine path. If you're not on your divine path, you're on a demonic path. A selfish creature that isn't participating in the divine creation. How many people are participating in the divine creation? And not bullshit. I go to church. Well, yeah, it doesn't mean shit, right? Are you connected to God? No. Are you connected to your soul? No. Do you have any sort of dialogue with the divinity within you? No. Well, then you're on a demonic path then, motherfucker, right? You're going the wrong fucking way. So the overwhelming evidence of everything that I'm talking about is right in front of us, right? It's just whether you care to see it or not. And so saving the system isn't a part of it. This isn't like Candace Owens and all these people, a battle of good and evil is to save America. It's to save the country. It's to save the government. It saves our culture. That the bad people, the deep state, are, we have to put them down. If we got rid of them, everything would be perfect. It'd be utopia. If we got rid of those other guys that are not on my team is the good guys. And when we get rid of those other bad guys, or we tell those bad guys, hey, bad guys, why don't you guys come over here and wake up and become my part of my team? My team is Team Woke. My team is Team Awake. I'm on the good team. You guys are on the bad team. If you guys would listen to me and stop being on the bad team and listen to me being on a good team, then everything would be good and the society would be great. It's not that. It's a system that is taking people in the wrong direction by making it about egoism. Egoism. It's the age of egoism, about what your ego wants and not about what your soul wants. And so people don't want to know what their soul wants. They don't want to know what God wants. It's just overwhelming. The evidence is there. By everything that people do. People flirt with the idea of God. That's most is what they do. They don't ask God, hey God, should I do this? Right? You don't think about God when you're doing something wrong. The Sajmark system has this practice of constant remembrance where you bring God into everything that you do. You think, oh, God is doing this and not me. People think about God when things go wrong. When they find out they have cancer, or their wife leaves them, or their husband's cheated on them, or whatever it is, right? They just got fired from their job. When people are scared shitless and they're miserable, hey God, can you help me? But when they're having a good time and they're all fucking drunk and whatever, and they're feeling good and they're healthy, now fuck you God, I'm just gonna go enjoy myself over here, right? But I'll come back to you when I need you. When things go wrong, I'll come back and pray. And and I want a relationship when things go badly. But right now, I'm pretty happy, so fuck you. I I'm not going to include you in my decision making. So the battle of good and evil is your battle between what your soul wants for you and what your ego wants for you. That's the battle. That's everybody's battle. And most people are losing. The egos are winning. We live in a time where egos are overwhelmingly winning that battle on an individual basis and a collective basis. And so we live in a time where egos, which are run amok, which have hijacked your true purpose, not your soul's purpose, but your ego's pursuits for pleasure and aggrandizement and narcissism and selfishness and what about me and not thinking about God and not sacrificing to do God's work and all the things that you need to do. And so it isn't about good winning over and saving society, good beating evil on a societal level. It's about accepting that this system sucks. It needs to collapse. We're going to suffer like incredibly, like a hangover of epic proportion for our wrongdoings, our collective wrongdoings. And then we can build a system based in the divinity that surrounds us and is in us and everything else, the divine laws. So this system has to come down, not because we take it down, because it's going to collapse of its own depravity. We don't need to do anything about that. We just have to accept that that's what's got to happen. And that's, and almost nobody can do it. And nobody wants to hear that shit. That's why nobody listens to me here. Anyways, let's get back to it. Okay, so a little bit more from Candace Owens. But you understand this thing that I'm saying here about the truth community. Like, everybody who comes on here, whether it's me or anybody else, they're saying, yeah, this is what's going on, right? Like, this is, my view. I get it. Like, I get it, right? And so people who are, similar to your beliefs will find you as a presenter, right? So, we'll find you or somebody like you. We'll find somebody who talks about things in a way that they see it. And people find their own, version of reality out there. That's the kind of the great thing, but also the bad thing about the internet. Where it used to be, you turned on the news and TV and there was just the official story. And it's like, well, do you like David Brinkley better than Walter Cronkite or, whoever the people reading the news to you was, right? Do you believe in what the right wing is saying or do you believe in what the left wing is saying? And then in these groups, there's subgroups, right? But it's very limited. And now with the internet, you find people who believe what you believe. But some people are just crazy fucks and they'll find some other crazy fuck out there. And some people are just stupid and they'll find somebody who panders to stupid people, right? But like the difference between my show and all these other shows is that, and I, maybe there's some other people like me, less so because it's not a successful business plan. But no, I don't look at what you believe or what all the demographics are there, all the boxes that people have. I know what you believe because I'm observant and I understand things. And I don't try to tell you what you want to hear, right? And all these other people do because, it's part of it's smart business. It's smart business to find a demographic out there and draw that demographic to your channel. Find out what they believe. And you might believe it too, or you might kind of believe it, or whatever it is, like Charlie Kirk, all these people, and tell them what they want to hear. And then once you do that, before you go and speak your truth, you got to figure out how these people are going to respond to it. And you can't like have a some kind of a moment, a come to Jesus moment like Charlie did. And then be like, well, I think Israel's involved because he's taking money from Israel and, his audience and all these things. I think Israel is complicit in Jeffrey Epstein and I think they're fucking America over. Yeah, but you've already taken their money, right? And so, Candace Owens can say Israel, but she can't say, oh, guess what? Trump assassination was fake too. Sorry, I told you to vote for that guy. And I know you guys that love Trump, so I'm fucked now, right? Don Lemons, when he was reading Kamala Harris's book, and he's like, I know you guys love Joe Biden because he has a lot of Joe Biden supporters. And so, you have to consider how your audience is going to react. And I never think about that. Like, I know how you guys are going to react. I know how certain people react. When I slammed Joe Biden for years, and I knew I had a lot of Trumpers here. And then when Trump started to be a piece of shit, and it was, he became president second term, and he started doing all these things that were just the opposite of what patriots, and I'm not a patriot, but the people who follow him are patriots are, right? When they started doing all that kind of shit, I was like, why aren't you guys speaking up about this? Why aren't you speaking up about his fake assassination attempt, right? All these things. And they can't do it because they have to pander to their audience, right?
What do I have for you guys today? Okay, well, first and foremost, the indictment against Tyler Robinson was just released, and I have a lot of questions that I think need to be answered regarding his trans boyfriend, Lance Twiggs. Well, I just spoke—
Lance Twiggs. I mean, Twiggs. Come on, Twiggs. Lance, they're going to remove my twig.
to a family member who told me a lot about Lance Twiggs because the media—
Did you talk to Mr. and Mrs. Twiggs about their son Lance? Are you talking to Lance's parents, the Twiggses?
Is kind of presenting him as this do-gooder. You might be interested to know that his family has a different perspective. Also—
You mean the Twiggses don't like their son Lance? Tell me it isn't so, Candace. You cracking the code. You're digging up the dirt. You're finding out all you can find out about the Twiggses and their son Lance.
So Turning Point employees are contacting me, a lot of them, okay?
What about his wife? Is she contacting you? Is his wife contacting you, or are you not high enough on the food chain that she'll talk to you? Like you're not Usha. You're not Usha Vance, right? She's not talking to you, but are they talking about her?
And I am not liking what I am hearing from them about—
But I'm not going to tell you till like fucking, a half hour from now because, I gotta talk about the Twiggses.
things that took place leading up to that Hamptons event, some changes at the organization in the month.
So like it's just the way that people present things. She's going to talk about the guy that I forget his name, but it doesn't matter. The guy who met with Charlie Kirk in the Hamptons, the Jewish guy, the guy representing Israel, and tried to bribe him and get him to, not make the changes he's going to make, right? But, if this means anything, her Israeli coverage, Israel would have to be involved in his assassination, for it to have any relevance. Because if Charlie Kirk was thinking about changing his perspective on Israel, and she won't say it because she's like, there's no evidence that Israel did anything. She doesn't want to go that far. But, if Charlie Kirk was about to turn on Israel, and he had been, so much of a supporter of Israel that Trump put an Israeli flag over his head and an American flag over Trump's head, like Charlie Kirk was some kind of asset of Israel, right? Charlie Kirk said that it says in the Bible that you have to honor the state of Israel. Just like fucking Ted Cruz said that when he was interviewed by Tucker Carlson, that great interview where Tucker Carlson rolled him. Again, not that Tucker Carlson's great, but that was, really funny. He just lit Ted Cruz up in that thing. If you're gonna say that Israel killed him, well then this is relevant. But if Charlie Kirk was about to turn on Israel and Israel's like, please don't do that, we'll pay you more money, that's nothing. Like that in itself is nothing. Yeah, of course they're going to do that, right? That they had a meeting and say, please, Charlie, don't fucking turn on us. Yeah, of course they would do that. Like that's not, but if they killed him or were involved in assassination, well, that's the fucking story. And she hints at it, but doesn't give that to you. So she implies it, that's like Israel's the bad guy. Sure. Are they the only bad guy? Like, and is it every Israeli person? No. Like it's fucking, like people want, when they carve you out into an audience, they first have to establish the bad guy. Like who's the bad guy, right? And, my thing is that we're all the bad guy. And so no one wants to hear that shit. That's why I suffer in terms of viewership. That we all have to change. We're all a part of this. We're all participating in an evil system. And we're all been compromised and we're not following our soul's path. Some of us more than others, but, we all could do better. We could all do better. But, to get a really good audience, and people are so remedial in their thinking, you got to establish a bad guy, a deep state. Oh, Trump is the devil, this kind of thing. Oh, Biden, you got to establish a bad guy. And people come to my channel because I slam all these pieces of shit because they all are, they're engaged in an evil process. But, I am not in a way where I'm like, they're the one bad guy and we're all the good guys, because it's just not true. Because we're doing nothing. Talking about it isn't really doing anything. If it changes your perspective and your orientation to the world, and like say you go out and you're now focused on having a relationship with your soul, you start doing the meditation, the Gratefullness meditation, my other channel that's free, that teaches people how to do the meditation and the transmission and cleaning. It's a comprehensive channel. Everything's on there. And you start working on yourself. Again, I'm not selling that because I don't give a shit. I mean, I'm offering something that I was given that changed my life. But whether you do it or not, it's in some ways better that you don't for me. It benefits me because it benefits everybody when somebody becomes spiritual. But, I mean, some of it would be a hassle for me, just whatever. And so, it's been a privilege for me to do it. Let's just put it that way. I've been lucky. And so, I'm paying that forward in that other channel, which is, again, a free channel that people can learn about how to do the fucking, all this stuff. And then some other way that you connect to God. If you just focus on praying to God directly and you never did that before, well, then, yeah, my channel has done something for somebody. But me making fun of Britney Spears dancing, right? Let me do the humping the pole. It's a good time for the humping the pole meme. There I go, do my hands, up at the pole, up at the pole, up at the pole. Pulling down the dress, humping the pole, up at the pole. Yeah, so I haven't done a Britney thing in a while. But, you have the enemy, right? So, kind of funny. So this, I went to eat breakfast and I turned on Morning Joe because there was nothing on ESPN. And I went back to the beginning because I want to see what they said about this thing. And so I'll show you how that started in a moment. But it's the Democrats whining. You know how the Democrats talked about Republicans and Trump becoming extremism and how they went after him during January 6th. And you know what I said back then? Well, the Democrats are fucking themselves. Because there's always, whenever you use force, there's a counter force. Whenever it's like you bounce a ball. You throw the ball against the ground, it bounces back up. There's a rebound, right? This is how physics works. But on a spiritual level, and a social level, these laws are similar to that. That whenever you use force, the force comes back at you, right? The force that you use, it eventually comes back at you. And so when you become powerful as a party, you have a binary party, and the Democrats impose their will, like we all suffered. I suffered from the Democrats pushing, Joe Biden's team, pushing for internet censorship. Going to YouTube and threatening, YouTube and Twitter and all these, various platforms to censor all of us. And I'm not a right-wing person, but I was censored because I was I was grouped into the conspiracy theorist group, which is, still a bad group to be in. And so right now Trump has lifted that, but Trump is trying to impose his own censorship. And he wants to go after anybody who, they brought in the term of hate speech, anybody criticizing him, which I showed you yesterday, right? And so whenever you do that, when you lose power, the other side comes back. And the Democrats are whining about the Republicans doing this. And so this video is called "The Less Vile Rhetoric is Tearing America Apart" with Eric Trump and Michael Malice. So what he says here is future of Western civilization if one side of the aisle is ready to take up arms. He plays this song that gets copyrighted, so I'm just reading his bullshit. Okay, so the Democrats aren't calling for violence. I mean, you're saying one side of the aisle. The Democratic politicians are pussies, right? They're not calling for violence. And there are people in the liberal wing that are calling for violence, but the percentage of people who own guns is overwhelmingly on the right. And the people who do own guns who are on the left are often like criminals. People who are liberals because they're Democrats because they belong to maybe a demographic, but they also are criminals and they're into, whatever. And so the people who are the Democrats who are, upper middle class, educated, people living in cities and they're metrosexual fucking, the metrosexual effeminized husband that, can't wait to get cocked, right? They're not calling for violence. It's silly to present it like that. This kid didn't do it because, this kid's a fake fucking story, but he didn't do it because they're all calling for violence and Charlie Kirk's assassination, right? It's silly. Like, it's fucking silly to say that. So he's playing this crappy country music song in the background, and it's getting copyrighted. But he's talking about Pam Bondi going after free speech, and he's got a bunch of, clips of people, which I'll show you here. And so we're not missing anything. So this is the thing here.
Maybe it's my algorithm. Maybe it's my emotion. But I keep getting fed and I keep internalizing. Sound from people across.
Look at him act. Look at him try to be...
Comedic stages, political platforms, and across the internet. People like comedian Michelle Wolf, people like Governor J.B. Pritzker, or even just random people that make me wonder about the future of humanity. Like this TikToker who wasn't satisfied simply with the death of Charlie Kirk.
To be honest, I don't really care if anybody who is a white supremacist gets sniped. I hope all of them get sniped. I hope more of them get sniped. I hope they come and burn their homes down to the ground. Like, honestly, it could have been worse. It should have been worse. Why not just wipe out the whole bloodline? Wipe it out. Remove them from play. Because people are really, like, upset that we don't feel empathy. I'm following in his footsteps. He told us not to feel empathy and that it wasn't wrong.
So you listened to him and you followed in Charlie Kirk's footsteps? So you listened to him and he said there's no... Empathy is a liberal new age construct word. And you love Charlie Kirk so much, you're like, I'm not going to have empathy. Charlie Kirk said not to have empathy. And I'm a big fan. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you're following his footsteps. Like, these remedial minds, like she's stupid, right? But you think this girl's going to climb up on a tower and people say stupid shit on the internet. That's what happens. But most of the people are too fucking stupid and too inactive and too pacified, too couch potatoed to do anything other than fucking talk. Like, is this, you think this is a real threat? She's really going to snipe a bunch of people? You think she's ever fired a sniper rifle? She's, she wants it to happen, just like the right wing. Like, how many of us were happy when fucking anti-vaxxers, people who were slamming anti-vaxxers and pushing the vaccine, when a celebrity pushed the vaccine and then got fucking some kind of side effect that seemed like they got turbo cancer or something like that, like, we weren't happy about that, right? Like, you weren't happy about that if you were an anti-vaxxer. Like, everybody celebrates their enemy dying. And we have a hateful system where, hate is a part of it. But even if you're not hateful, when people get what they deserve, you're like, yeah, good, you got what you deserve, motherfucker. Everybody dies. Like, death isn't like like something that can be avoided. So, it's silly to put dumbasses up there, people incapable of doing anything, and call this a threat, right? This is not a threat.
And all this and that, and this, that, and the third. I agree with him. I don't have empathy. He's right. Empathy makes you weak. And I definitely do not have empathy for my political enemies and people who go against my human rights. It's that simple. You wanted to play stupid games, you won the stupid prize. Eternal nap. Good luck next time.
Why not wipe out their entire bloodline?
Oh my God, Will Kane. It's so horrible. It's so horrible. Let's take away all American rights. Let's disarm everybody. Let's get rid of the Second Amendment. Let's do martial law. Put more fucking troops in the streets. Get rid of freedom of speech. You should be able to say shit like that. If people are gonna, the thing about freedom of speech, and I said this when the Democrats were doing this, when they were, going for censorship. If you think that people talking on the internet is going to cause mass chaos and people who are just like, fuck the system and willing to act in a way, this kid would have had to have no sense of self-preservation, no future. Like he knew he was going to be caught or killed, right? Like if this kid was real, if this kid actually did it. Like every day when you go out and drive, there's Woody Allen's movies suck. When I saw these Woody Allen movies when I was a kid, I'm like, why do people think these are funny? Like, they weren't funny. And now they're like perverted and just, over the tops, neurotic. I mean, he's so neurotic, that fucking guy. But there was a movie called, I don't know what it's called, but there's a scene where Woody Allen is talking to his girlfriend's brother. And it turned out the guy was played by, what's that guy? The cowbell guy, right? That weird, I can't believe I can't remember his name. But anyways, it'll pop up in a second. Don't tell me, don't care, don't need to know. You guys know who I'm talking about. The guy who said more cowbell on Saturday Night Live. And I had no idea it was him that played the part. Because he's so fucking crazy and eccentric. So, and Woody Allen's talking to him and goes, and the guy says, sometimes I just want to, Christopher Walken, sometimes I just want to stare into the headlights, right? I want to drive into the headlights, right? Like he's saying this, like he's suicidal, and Woody Allen's freaking out. And then they show him, Christopher Walken driving, and Woody Allen in like the backseat or passenger seat with his eyes wide open, like because he knows this guy has this, desire to steer into the headlights. But every day that you go out and you drive, everybody is driving a fatal weapon because people die in car crashes all the time, right? You're driving in a death box and other people are driving in it. And you are, hoping that people obey the rules. Because if people don't obey the stoplights and the other things, you'll be dead. If they don't obey the lines, they say, all right, I'm just going to drive on the other side of the road. Like people can do that shit, right? Like we're all hoping that everyone else wants to live as much as we do. So much so that they won't be on their fucking cell phones and, causing accidents and, doing things that are possibly could lead to somebody else's death or their own death or whatever, right? I mean, that's just one example. Like when you go to food and restaurant, you hope that people don't poison you or, that they have bad meat. I worked in a restaurant and the place was going down and they had like fucking boneless chicken breasts sitting in, and it's like when I was, I was a vegetarian for 18 years because of the meditation that I did. But, and they had this meat that was like once you take chicken off the bone and the fucking salmonella, I mean, everyone knows, like, it was in there for like a week. And I was like, you guys are fucking using that? Like, well, they were like tough times. Like you're hoping that the people, and, I mean, I don't know how, I mean, maybe no one died from it, but certainly, you hope that people are, have some sense of morality or, some sense of, just responsibility, right? Some sense of, self-preservation is the thing with the cars that they want to live, right? They don't want to go to jail. They don't want any of these things. There's something in themselves that would prevent them from doing really bad shit. Like we have to have this trust, this shared trust that people are going to do their job, that they're going to, do their job effectively. They're not going to put other people at risk. They're not going to risk themselves going to jail or being, blamed for wrongful death suits or things, that they have some sense of, yeah, I'm going to follow the rules because the rules are good enough for, they're important. That you stay on your side of the yellow lines. I talk about this, how my wife and I were driving to this park. We live out in the country. And it's about 15 minutes from our house. And there was a road coming down, like a country road. And there was a hill. And the person, when you're coming down this road, there was a hill And at the bottom of the hill was a stop sign. And on the left was a river. On our left is a river, right? So this road is coming off to the right. I'm in the passenger seat. My wife's driving. And this car, I look up and this car's heading right for us. And it's blowing through the stop sign, right? And we just pass. And this car, like I'm looking at this car and it's like a couple feet away from us. We go past it. And then it's coming. There's another car behind us. And it goes between the two cars, like just random luck. A second or two difference. If we had left a second or two later, I'd be dead right now. Like it was that kind of thing. You know, it would have hit me. There was no chance I'm surviving that. The guy's going like, it's like some kids probably joyriding. And they're flying down this hill. And they're going 45 miles an hour or so. Or whatever. And I would have been T-boned. It would have been it. And if I wasn't dead, I would be fucked up for the rest of my life. Like whatever it was, right? Like paralyzed or something. It was fucking, like it was a complete like, oh my God, this could have just happened to me kind of thing, right? Like I'm like, this is how, the fragile world in which we live in. And the kids, they were going on a joyride. They probably had been down this road, and they were flying around this curve, and the kid didn't see the stop sign. I mean, I didn't get a look at the car, but I just assumed this was a piece of shit old, kid, a car like some high school kid would drive. And they are heading right for this river. And somehow they made the turn. The guy must have jammed on the brakes or whatever, slid around. I mean, the tires must have been bald, like not enough tread, that they didn't catch. Otherwise, they would have flipped and rolled. And I was like, holy shit, we almost fucking died, right? So, but, they weren't obeying the rules. They were out fucking joyriding and driving unsafely, which people do. And sometimes it ends up you getting fucking killed, right? And so this kid, he didn't have any sense of self-preservation. I'm in this story, the kid that they say killed Charlie Kirk, and all the other kids, all these other individual people, like, let's say you had the thought you wanted to kill Charlie Kirk. Like you wish he was dead. But would you do it, right? I had a vegan once, and I was making a point where I was saying that everybody should at some point not outsource, if you're going to eat meat, you should be involved in the hunting process and preparing process. Because most people, they want to eat meat without, knowing that it's a dead animal, this thing. And, raising, it's tough when you raise your animals and you got to get them processed and, even that. If you're around animals and then you're like, oh, now we're going to eat this chicken, like it's just you get attached to them or whatever. It's more than just something you buy in the store. And so I was making this point that everyone should, kill an animal or whatever it is if they're going to eat animals, right? Like they should kill something they eat, like a fish or whatever it might be. And some vegan said to me, you're promoting the killing of animals. I hope that somebody shoots you. Somebody else, right? Because this pussy vegan. But, like people wish bad things on other people, but they don't act on it. Some higher level consciousness. People have your low moments, your moments of hatred, your moments of anger, and you have bad thoughts and whatever about somebody else, but they don't act on it. But they say these kids are acting on it, not just in terms of impulsively doing something, but planning for a week to go up on this tower and shoot somebody. And we're to believe that there's so many people out there ready to do that shit. And, people, like even suicide bombers, like that's a whole fucking another thing that's not very believable. People have self-preservation. And, the very few people like wish to die. And, when you want to die and you're suicidal, you're too depressed to like take anybody else. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like not something that people are like, yeah, I want to take somebody else out. They hate themselves. They want to take themselves out, right? And so, all this stuff is just made up ideas about other people. Like these villains that are in a lot of movies and TV shows, they don't have any sense of, like you see these villains that just go out and do villainous things because the role is written that way. But the villain themselves doesn't have any like, what was the villain's motivation for doing something? Just because he hates, these villains who lock in on a person, and stalk them and these things. Yeah, that happens, but not to the extent that you see in these movies. And they almost like they're indestructible sometimes, these villains. These like villains that should have died like 3 times already in the movie, but they just keep on coming back, and they have no chance. They're either going to jail or they're going to be killed, and that's all their motivation. Like they've just given up, and they're just focused 100% on hatred and revenge and whatever things that they're doing. And they've created these people that have no, they don't have any lives. They're villainous NPCs. Their whole life is just, this kid has no personality. He's not going to sit down for a 3-hour interview and discuss why he did what he did and name all the liberal people that were a part of it, because they don't want this kid to be a human being. They don't want this kid to do anything but say, yeah, my name is Robinson, Tyler Robinson. That's all you're going to get from that kid, right? Like they're not going to let the kid tell his story, go to trial and, be up on the stand and tell his story and, this manifesto that was written by someone in the CIA, this kind of thing. This kid's whole existence is to bang a tranny, become radicalized, and shoot Charlie Kirk. That's all that's all he is. That's all he is to everybody. He's playing a part in this thing I call the show, right?
The limits of free speech in the United States, as defined by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, exist at the line of a direct incitement to violence. Are you calling people to commit imminent and specific violence? That line is being pushed. That line is being tested by everyday.
So you're excluding right-wing people. Why don't you show right-wing people saying this? Why don't you show right-wing people? Because you can find it. This woman, nobody was watching this until the right wing got a hold of it. You find video clips all the time that the left wing make famous about right wing dopes. Just like you find clips all the time of left wing dopes being made famous by people like Will Kane, because they want to show, really stupid people on the other side to make their arguments work, and their arguments don't work, right? Because everybody's fucked. We live in a fucked society. People are incompetent. How many competent people right? All the things I said. And so.
Common fringe lunatics like the one you just heard on TikTok, or people that were once a guest here on Will Kane Country. We'll play that sound a little bit later for you when it comes to YouTube streamer Destiny.
Destiny. We're going to get it from Destiny.
But as abhorrent as it is, and you've been feeling and going through over the past.
This fucking guy, Eric Kirk, right? Where's Destiny? I thought you were going to play Destiny. And so Eric Kirk talks a while with these other people. All right. Here's a streamer here. Here's the people here.
United States of America, how do we move forward? Are there any lessons from history about this moment where looking down the hallway, there's not a lot of light? We break that down with one of the smartest guys I know, Michael Malice, coming up on Will Kane Country.
Okay, here's playing this country shit here. Here we go.
Wolf, who I believe at one time at least had a platform on Comedy Central, had this to say about Charlie Kirk.
Right-wing commentator Charlie Kirk was shot in the neck talking about guns. He was very supportive of the Second Amendment and the right to own guns. He was also a bigot and a misogynist. Does that mean I think he should have been shot in the neck? No, of course not. I would much rather him live a very long life and grow old to watch his daughter become a successful, independent career woman who's maybe a little into witchcraft. Think of all the things he might have seen in his lifetime. Like a lesbian president, nationally recognized Muslim holidays, beautiful mixed-race children, unisex urinals.
She wished for him a long life where her wish list for the future of America could be realized to the disappointment of Charlie Kirk. Joining me now is the author of several...
Yeah, I don't know why you would even play that. Like, that doesn't make your point at all. In fact, she said she didn't wish he was shot. Right? Like, she didn't say that at all. Like, what the fuck are you even playing that for? And so, it's not like it's a non-funny joke. She's very annoying. I think she has like some kind of fucked up thing. She's like fucked up in some way. But I've seen her before. She's an unfunny comedian. And that doesn't make your point. That's just silly shit. Anyways, you get the idea. And, right-wing people wish bad things on, they're now wish bad things on this kid. They're not going to celebrate this kid getting executed. His widow isn't going to be in the audience when he gets, when they turn, all this shit. I mean, all these people believe this kid did it. They're not going to go for the death penalty. They're not going to be happy when this kid is killed. So, fuck you. It's just right-wing people invented the death penalty. Right-wing people, your first half of your fucking Bible, God is one of the most vengeful motherfuckers out there, the wrathful God in the Old Testament. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. There's a lot of eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth people in the right wing. That's why you guys invented all these fucking weapons. The left wing isn't responsible for the military-industrial complex, which has caused so much pain and suffering around the world. So, you can't take the high ground in the right wing. You guys are the fucking low ground, and then the liberals are low ground for moral depravity and murdering fetuses, right? You guys are both fucking, this is the problem. They're both depraved. So then on the other side, this is the Morning Joe.
Cato Institute, conservative think tank, published a study just last week that found terrorists from the right were responsible for 6 times more deaths than people from the left. I actually don't want to go tit for tat on this, but
yeah, but you just did, right? That's the definition of tit for tat. I don't want to go tit for tat. I don't want to go tit for tat, but you guys kill 7. Your terrorists kill 7 times more people than our terrorists do. Your terrorists are way worse. You guys are much more terrorists than we. I'm not going tit for tat or anything, but the Conservative Institute, that's one of your guys' institutes, just said you guys kill more, your terrorists kill more people than our terrorists. I'm not tit for tatted it at all.
what I am asking for is that this rhetoric of blaming one side or the other stop, if you could convey that to the president, and that we actually work on things that are solutions.
Wait, just before we get to Kash Patel. So this piece of shit, before the January 6th thing, HBO put together a great documentary called Kill Chain, and it was about how they thought Trump, this is 2020, was going to rig the election for himself. And they brought in, amongst other people, Nancy Klobuchar, who said she was panicked that the election was going to be hacked and that the election could so easily be hacked. And they went to Vegas and they had all these hackers who showed how easy it was to hack these voting machines. You know, they all had different ways of doing it, but they said it's so easy to do, right? To make them, to cheat in an election. And so the whole thing was about how the 2020 election was going to be compromised and Trump was going to win. And it came out like a couple of weeks before the election. And of course, the Democrats rolled out, Trump got completely worked by the Democrats in a way I've never seen anybody be worked before. He got worked on COVID so badly. He did Operation Warp Speed, which is a fucking nightmare. And all the bullshit that he did. Now he's come out and says the vaccines are bad. I've yet to get to that thing. Like he's got this thing, after doing Operation Warp Speed. But he did all that shit, and he, closed down the country and fucked himself on the economy. And then they used that against him. And then they rolled out these mail-in ballots, which, if the election was rigged, that's how they did it. But she didn't say shit about that, right? She was worried about the election being rigged. But then, oh my God, elections, you guys are questioning the elections. Which, of course, for these motherfuckers, you can never question election integrity, because once you do, it gets rid of the illusion that these elections actually matter, because they fucking don't, right? But she was a part of that. So now she's saying this shit here.
So could you commit to me, Mr. Patel, Director Patel, that you will do that?
Absolutely, Senator.
So you think that this motherfucker's going to go to Trump and say, guess what, we're killing people too. Can we go after right-wing people and people that you're fans? Or can we just go after the people that criticize you? What do you think Trump's going to say to this, right? You think Trump's going to have anybody goes to Trump and says, it's not just the left, it's the right? You think Trump's going to listen to them?
That was an exchange between Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar and FBI Director Kash Patel during what was an otherwise
Is he dying his Gumby do? And what's up with Mika? His Gumby do?
hearing before the Judiciary Committee. We'll bring you more of the big moments on that straight ahead. Plus, we'll go.
Well, that's a must-see TV.
The new details about the man accused of killing Charlie Kirk following his first court appearance yesterday. Also ahead, we'll dig into a highly anticipated meeting today for the Federal Reserve after the appointment of a Trump ally to the central bank's board of governors. And we'll bring you a live report from the UK as President Trump makes an unprecedented second state visit to Windsor Castle.
What the fuck's he doing there? Is Charlie Kirk's funeral over? Is he fucking, can't wait to escape America before they bring up Jeffrey Epstein again? It's him and Prince Andrew. They have a picture of him and Prince Andrew.
Morning and welcome to Morning Joe. It is Wednesday, September 17th, along with Joe, Willie, and me. We have
you and you too.
News and MSNBC political analyst, former U.S. Senator Claire McCaskill. Joe, a lot to get to this morning.
A lot to get to. The opening clip, though, I think an important reminder.
Oh yeah, that was she cracked the code. I mean, just a big reminder
of exactly where we are right now and where we're sitting as a country. As you do have the president and people around the president trying to blame one side for political violence through the years in America, following, of course, the absolutely horrific shooting and assassination of Charlie Kirk.
It's not assassination when it's a lone fucking 22-year-old with a transgender boyfriend that climbed into a tower. Yeah, that's not assassination. Like, maybe, I mean, you could call it a hate crime, I guess, if you were reaching. But, again, it's a non-believable story.
But what you heard in that clip, obviously, Willie, was a United States senator who knew and who had worked with the Democratic leader who had been assassinated in her own home with her husband, and then even had their family dog shot dead.
No way, they got the dog? That's fucking bullshit.
By a man who had a hit list of 42 Democrats. And
look at Mika. Look at her look down at this when she says 42 Democrats.
Had a hit list of 42 Democrats.
And it's so painful. Oh.
So I know it had to be very important for Amy Klobuchar to get that out while she's hearing all the lies. And we don't usually use that word much as far as try not to.
We try not to use the word lies. Even though they're lying all the time, we don't like to use that word, the L word.
I fail all the time, and I'm sure sometimes do. We did yesterday, though, when we had the Vice President of the United States saying everybody knows that the preponderance of violence in America politically comes from the left. Well,
look at her shake her head. No, it's not true.
There have certainly been terrible examples of that with the shooting of Steve Scalise and others during the congressional baseball practice. 2 attempts on Donald Trump's life during
Jesus Christ.
The campaign. And of course, one of those in Butler, Pennsylvania, came from a family of Republicans, and we're still trying to figure out exactly what his ideological drive was, but still, that is a Republican.
Yeah, because you know nothing about him. Like, how do you know nothing about a guy who shot the president? Does anyone remember his fucking name? Like, so, because it's fake as fuck, right?
Someone on the right that's being shot at. And then, of course, the absolutely horrific slaying of Charlie Kirk. And then you have all the examples on the other side. And as Amy said, let's not go tit for tat on this. But even Cato, an institute funded by the Koch brothers, taken over by the Koch brothers, had a study that showed the overwhelming majority of political violence in America over the past 20 years has been from the right. Now,
It's the right thing. It's a right problem. So, it goes forward here.
Changes. In the 60s, it was predominantly from the left. They're just bombings all the time. In the 70s, from the left. That changed in the 80s and 90s. And it's been that way for a while, Willie. But, the idea that we have a president that's trying to divide Americans instead of bringing Americans together.
Yeah, that's exactly what every president's done. He says something here. I started off of coming into this part here, I think.
This time is something that's sad.
Actually, what I did was I turned this on and went in to do something in the kitchen. I came back, and so I missed this whole fucking thing, which is just, him going tit for tat.
And something that's unfortunate and something that we all need to pray. The president moves past and he tries to bring us together and say, this happens too much on both sides. We need to come together as a country so we can debate the issues. And
that if a president just would say that, all our problems would be solved. And we'd be like, hey, you're right, President. You're right. We both need to change. In fact, I'm going to change right now. That's what...
And do, actually, I mean, what Charlie Kirk was talking about, prove me wrong. Let's have a debate. Prove me wrong. Here I am. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to disagree with you. It's going to get tough. It's going to get combative. But prove me wrong. And then, of course, yesterday, Willie, with all that Pam Bondi was saying, you played Charlie Kirk's own words yesterday, talking about free speech and just how expansive that is, and now how some on the hard right are trying to stifle free speech. They're engaging in cancel culture. You have the free press going, wait a second, hold on. The right is now doing what we've been attacking the left for doing for years?
That's what I wanted to get to. I said this when the left was doing it because it was going to come back around, because it always fucking comes back around, right? And like all this bullshit, like all this left-right paradigm bullshit, they want you divided. They wouldn't have a show if it wasn't like, they define the bad guy. And so everybody out there, whether it's an independent person doing what I do here, I showed you Candace Owens or someone like that, Tucker Carlson, those people. Don Lemons, any of these people, or anybody on mainstream media, if they have a defined enemy. Now, I talk about these pieces of shit all the time because they're pieces of shit. They're fucking people who are demonic and going against their soul like everybody else, but they're, a lot of these things that these people do, they know they're fucking bullshit. Like, they get a script and they have to say things they may or may not believe in, right? I mean, look at fucking Mika, Jesus Christ. And so they, like I said, when you're pandering to an audience, you have to leave out certain details and things that, you should have some sort of a crisis of conscience, right? Where you know that you're like saying things that make you feel bad. Like, you start maybe having panic attacks. You can't sleep at night because you're out there just lying about shit just because you're, pandering to a demographic that's your audience, right? It's a huge problem, and it's happening all across the truth community, everywhere on the internet, where you just see something and you kind of, you're not swayed emotionally. You don't get emotionally sucked into it because it has nothing to do with you. Like, when they were censoring me, that's something, right? But you work towards, like, because of spiritual connection to God, to where you're not going to be emotional about the stuff you're talking about. And so objectively, you just look at not just, like I said, facts are like silly because, they're just, these kind of facts are all about opinions and who saw one way, whatever it is. Like you can't know everything about any of these people. And people don't know everything about themselves, and they don't know about their full potential as a spiritual person, and they don't know their full potential as a demon. Like how far can you go as a demon, right? How far will you push it? If you embrace your ego, like what will you do as an egotistical person cut away from God? Like to what depths of depravity will you plunge? what are you capable of? Like murder, rape, like, psychological abuse. I mean, what are you capable of when you go over to the dark side? And as a saint, as a spiritual person, what are you capable of, right? Like people don't have like either of those things, those types of things. And so I should have put this on a voiceover because, whatever. Maybe I'll do something to put this in the. It's more something that should also go in the journey series that I do for the members thing. But anyways, people have that the potential to be good and to be a saint and be a sinner. Everybody has that in them, and none of this is focused on, right? They want you to have an enemy. They give you an enemy, and Candace Owens has an enemy right now, which is Israel. These guys have an enemy right now, which is Pam Bondi and Trump, the Trump administration. Trumpers have an enemy, which is the right-wing people and the women that Will Kane was showing you, and all these so-called radical left people that are pushing all this fomenting hate. I don't think I pronounced it right once. All that stuff, right? They're pushing this agenda, and it's like to externalize a villain. Like people have to have a villain to root against. It's like when you watch football to root against the Dallas Cowboys or the Philadelphia Eagles or the New England Patriots when they were great. Like it's everybody but Duke, right? People like to root for people and they like to root for the home team and, all this indoctrination bullshit that people go through. But they also love to root against people. They love to see somebody that they hate get it, They love to see Kobe Bryant lose or Michael Jordan lose or, these things. These various, especially when there's political things involved. They like to see people get their fucking just desserts. And, as long as humanity is focused externally on outward demons and villains, we're just going to go in the wrong direction because your life revolves around negativity, hate, and you focus more on the things that you hate than focusing on the people that you're supposed to love. And that's what's happened here. Let me go over to a voiceover here. Okay, so I forgot that I could take an audio clip from Premiere Pro and open it up in Audition and save it on my audio files, which means I could put that audio in the Journey series. So that's what's happening for you listening to the Journey series. So I want to read some comments, but first, we all have to act and become so automatic, we're performing. The way that you are if you're just by yourself and the thoughts that you have. And then all the thoughts that you don't express to other people. All the thoughts that are inside you that you don't share with other people. Or, whatever it might be. It might not be thoughts. It might be, whatever things that you don't want other people to know about that you're thinking about. And then there's ways that you act when you're by yourself. Or people that you feel completely comfortable around. Your spouse or, some siblings, people who know you differently, right? Like, and also, after you leave your home and you come back into your home, like let's say you're the scapegoat of your family and everyone talks about you as like kind of a big piece of shit, right? And you go out and you become the most successful one in your family and famous or whatever. And then you come back in and they're still treating you like you used to be. And then you have to act like that, right? You have to act like these people want you to, the way that they see you. And when you're in relationships with people, either a job or your significant others, and they see you in a way that's not you. Like my ex was somebody that needed to be a victim. And so she had two kinds of relationships, heroes and villains. In the beginning of our relationship, when I wasn't very nice to her and I wasn't, I was stressed out about the marriage for lots of reasons and I was struggling, she treated me like a hero, which was weird. And then when I became softer, better, and more committed, she put me in the villain category. And so there were times we had arguments and she would have these psychological breakdowns and she would get knives to cut herself and threaten suicide. And, I'd have to eat shit to get her back to normal. And I basically had to take responsibility for everything that was, she would be provoking arguments and I would be totally disconnected, just fucking gone, trying to avoid it. I just want to get sucked into her bullshit, right? But inevitably, she would somehow drag me into it after maybe days of like needing, she just would go through these cycles. And then I would have to, after she flipped the fuck out, I would have to like, not deal with my feelings. Like there were times I just like hated her, but I had to like suck it all up and, apologize and pretend it was my fault just to get her fucking, right with the world again. We had kids and stuff, right? And, she saw me in ways that I wasn't. She was villainizing me in ways that I wasn't. In the beginning, she idolized me in ways that I wasn't too, right? Which wasn't healthy. When people see you in a way that you're not. But it's always better when people see you as better than you are. Because there's a possibility that they might pull that out of you. But if people see you worse than you are, and you wake up every day and everyone's looking at you like you're a piece of shit, right? Like you're... my wife and I had watched this show on Netflix. Let me get the correct title here. It was called The Unknown Number, The High School Catfish. And I put it in, the category that I might watch it. There's things, I like all the documentaries on Netflix. Even if they're not very good, they're better than a lot of the other shit that's out there. And my wife, and I watch TV together, but she often will fall asleep, so I have these other things that I watch. And if it's good, I will watch it together. Like if I said it's like worth watching. So I had this thing. It was in the whatever it was. I think I was watching a football game, and so I needed something else to watch briefly. And so the thing was like an hour and a half long. So I was like, all right, I'll start watching it. But I was hesitant because, high school kids just suck. I didn't think I could stand an hour and a half of listening to high school kids talk about their worldview. But I started watching it, and the kids weren't all that bad. They were from a small, really small town in Michigan. And there was a young couple, and they were getting catfished, and the catfisher was saying horrific things, brutal things. And I was getting tired. My wife had gone to bed a little bit earlier than I did. And, sometimes I, have trouble. Like, I take a nap, so I stay up a little later. And I started to get tired. And I wanted to find out who it was, like, because I knew it was, like, it was going to bug me until I watched it the next day. And it might be 2 days before it might not, I might not be able to watch for a couple of days, just depending on what it was. And so I'm fighting off sleep. And spoiler alert, because if you're going to watch, it's worth watching. I watched it a second time. And this person who was catfishing was saying horrible things to this girl, even told the girl to commit suicide, and was saying that the catfisher was saying they were having sex with a boyfriend, and the boyfriend wanted them, and that the girl should just kill herself, right? And horrible things. I can't get into all the horrible things. And it turns out it was the girl's mom. And she was saying really fucking inappropriate things. And there was like, a 4-inch notebook full of printed messages. Like the FBI got involved. I mean, it was fucked up. And, it was shocking. Like it was how bad it was, how comprehensive. It went on for like 2 years. And, it caused all kinds of people to get brought into it. And there was all these kids. This is a very small high school. There was like 60 kids in a class, like there was 60 seniors, everybody knew each other. I mean, it's a really small school, like something like that. A tiny school in a small town. And everybody knew each other. And these people were being accused, and everyone was thinking it was them, and they, really negatively affected them, right? This thing I'm talking about, I just was talking about before, about how when people think badly of you, their thoughts and what they say about you affects you. And it's like you start thinking about yourself. Like there's a saying, if you show up to work every day and somebody calls you an asshole, one day you show up to work and you are one, right? Like you get labeled. And, when you're around people who are presenting you and, they need you to be something that you're not, and it's something shitty, those relationships are horrible. And my ex needed that. So, I was like, when I mercifully was released from that relationship, that's why I don't take any shit from people who make shit up about me in the comment section. people can say shit, to yourselves. You can do whatever, but don't come to my channel and put me in this, paint me in a light, like say I'm jealous when I'm not, or say something that's stupid. That's not the case because you're too stupid or too remedial to figure out what I'm really saying or who I really am, right? Like, I don't care if you do it somewhere else. I have this policy, like so everything that you see here, the way I ban people, like I have rules, and I tell the rules, I don't have a complaint department. I don't want to hear you nagging me and telling me, I get a lot of people now complaining about me swearing. Go somewhere else, if you don't like it. I mean, there's times I don't swear, and YouTube used to demonetize for swearing, so I was better about it, and then, it comes and goes. Like right now, I'm kind of just like, fuck it, just in general, because it's the same shit all the time. Like we're collapsing, and it's just, the stupidity and the depravity are at such high limits, it's like affecting me in that way. But either way, like I don't have a complaint department. Like, if you don't like it, go somewhere else. Either you're getting something from these videos or you're not. I'm not here to pander to you. I'm not here just because I want people to listen to me. Like, I don't even care about that anymore. There's people who, you can tell from the comment section, they're desperate for people to hear them and see them. And I don't have that at all. Like in the beginning, sure, when I started this YouTube channel and I wanted to have more viewers and more whatever. This is part of the problem with my channel shrinking, is that I just don't give a shit about that stuff anymore. So it's not, I don't put any effort into it, even though I need to keep the channel going. And, there needs to be people to listen to it. If I have something to say and I'm doing God's work, then, I need to do enough so the message gets out there. But I have just very little interest in it. And like I said, there's lots of people out there just don't see seen or heard. And they want to be acknowledged, and they need it from somebody in authority, and they, some of you want that from me, and I can't give it to you because I think it's wrong. Like it's you're chasing something that's unnecessary, right? It doesn't matter if people hear your opinion. Like everybody thinks their opinion's worth hearing, and it's not. Like for lots of people, your opinion's like fucking worthless because you don't see the world and so you're seeing the world in such a distorted lens. But anyhow, I've had to make rules. So I don't know I think it's just been 7 years, like sometime 7 years ago. My wife and I got married, and we were on our honeymoon, we were on vacation. And some piece of shit from Canada made a video about some of my old videos. I did some old videos about there was all these Hollywood celebrity men who dressed up like women, like all these A-list actors. And there were a lot of women who, had traits of being dudes. And I made a video about Michelle Obama because I saw this other right-wing video about Michelle Obama, and I looked into it, and some of the stuff was true. It was my biggest video. It got 2 million views. And so, there became this transpocalypse thing, there was a guy who posted videos, I think his name was Mr. E, and his videos suck. He'd be like, look at her hands. That's a man. That's a dude. Look at her lips. That's a man. Like just stupid shit. And I kind of started it. Like I was kind of responsible for the whole, a lot of these women in Hollywood culture might be men. But I did it in a thoughtful way. And some of the stuff I posted was wrong. And, if I was making a video, if a celebrity woman looked like a dude, I would take the pictures that supported my argument. And I didn't show you the pictures there where she looked like a woman. And I realized that was bullshit. Like, so if I was going to do those videos now, they wouldn't be as popular and they wouldn't be as, they'd be more about speculation. I realized that I had to say, the difference between speculation and fact. And I lightened up about my videos because, like we didn't really even know. Like, most of the stuff we don't know. We're just, it's speculation. But anyways, this guy made a video and he was calling me a boomer and I'm really Generation X. Like I'm on the cusp of being Generation X. And he was like trying to cut on me. And some people showed up from his channel saying, oh, this guy just destroyed you, wanting me to see the video. And I didn't really think about it, but the guy was a real piece of shit. He looked like Eddie Munster. And I was going to just unload on him because I like doing that shit. Like, but I made a video, and I made one mistake in the video, so I took it down. I was making a second video, and then he made a second video. And I realized, I looked at his channel had 200,000 views on videos, but they were fake views. He only had like 18 comments. And I'm pretty sure the people that showed up on my channel to say that it was this guy made a video about you, were him. Like he had another account, and he was hoping that I would give him time on my channel to expose people to his channel. He was, making video. I looked through his channel, and I see that he was using bots to inflate his views, and he was just, clout chasing. And, his stuff was just so stupid that he was saying about me and, whatever. And when I realized I'm on my honeymoon, like, and I'm getting all like, I'm going to take this motherfucker down. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, who cares, right? And from then on, I was like, people can make videos about me. And if it's somebody that I don't respect, which is kind of a lot of people on the internet, and they say stupid shit about me that isn't true, I'm not going to watch it. I don't care. Like, I don't have to. If somebody makes a video about me, I don't, like, I'll watch about a minute of it. And if I'm going to benefit the person by saying something, I won't say anything about it. If I really feel the need to say something, I will. But my general position is, I say shit about people all the time. I mean, I work to be as accurate as I can. I don't make up shit, and I don't really exaggerate things unless it's in a comedic way. I don't, try to, make people sound worse than they are. I just, I call it like I see it, but it's not anything that I'm doing personally to them. I don't want them to watch. I'm not wanting them to hear what I have to say, because it's not going to help them unless it does, and, would it be a rare case that it would. But if people are going to, like, make videos about me, I don't care. Somebody sent me a video of some dope saying stupid shit about me. And I'm like, I wouldn't listen to this person in general, so why am I going to listen to them just because they're talking about me, right? So that became my policy. Like, but people who were going to bombard me and tell me I was a piece of shit in my own comment section and be wrong about it, right? And just in general, just nag at me or whatever, people wanted to argue, debate, whatever, threaten. Like, I'd either call them out in a comment or I just ban them. So that, that became my reason for it, because you don't want to be around people who are hoping for and have created a negative version of you that's worse than you are, because it'll start to affect you and you'll start becoming what they think you are. It'll start, influencing you. But going back to what I was originally saying here, there are times in your life where you have to act. It might be at work, it might be in certain social circumstances, and it's like you flip a switch and you have to perform. You have to, be on your best behavior, like the way people are in church. You have to, repress things that you might normally say. You have to be different than you normally are. And people just get used to that. Like performing now on social media and, getting dressed up and getting the right lighting, and people become their own publicists, and they're putting out this artificial version of themselves, pretending that they're happy and pretending they got a dream marriage. And, people like this Erica Kirk, right? Like that was just a performance that she had to put on. And, you should be conscious when you have to do that. Like realize that you're doing something and you might be forced to do it based on social circumstances, but, be aware of it. Like just, people just do it automatically and they forget. And before you know it, they don't even remember how sincere they are, right? You ever see that guy? He does this comedy bits. He's a liberal, but he has this thing. He's an IKEA worker, and he, comes in and he, the customer says something, and then he has this comeback, and he says something like, I fake laugh so much I don't even remember what my real laugh sounds like, right? But for people who come to my channel, you got to realize I don't want to do any of that shit. I don't want to pretend anything. I'm going to try and make myself sound better, I mean, I guess I do that some ways without unconsciously, that it's coming from, a position that I know more, I see things more clearly, and, whatever it is. But I feel like that's the case. But, anyways, I'm not going to go along with, just what people want to hear. When I was growing up, I lived in Connecticut. I was between New York and Boston. And so I was 2 hours from New York and 2 hours from Boston. So most of the people who live in Connecticut were either like Yankees fans or Red Sox fans, Knicks fans or Celtic fans. And I didn't like any of those teams. I almost always rooted against them, and I had to watch them. and the Patriots and the Giants and the Jets always sucked. I mean, when I was growing up, before Bill Belichick got there, which is later on in my life, but, when I was a kid, I just had to watch sucky teams I didn't like, right? And I realized that this regional bullshit, like I was never a fan of Connecticut. I've never been like, oh, wow, great, I live in this city. And, people, there's cities like Cleveland's a city where there's a lot of patriotism for Cleveland, which seems a little bit undeserved. Like I haven't really been there, but there are people who live in Cleveland seem to love the city a lot more than it deserves, right? There's these cities that people love, but and they just go along with things and they root for the home team. And, I've never been that kind of person, right? Like I've always been like, I'll make up my mind for myself kind of thing. So with that in mind, let's get to a few comments here. So, like I said, I didn't really get so many of these Republican dopey Kirk fans in my last 3 videos. I got some in the initial video. The person says, Kirk's assassination was politically motivated hate crime in capital letters perpetrated by violent left-wing communists who were radicalized by being spoon-fed mindless propaganda by the Communist Democrat Party's legacy's minions. And there's a couple of responses. One person says, congratulations on your brainwashing. And the person says, Communist Democrat Party funded NGOs are the single largest threat to the Republic. Domestic terrorist organizations like Black Lives Matter and Antifa and the Act Blue are nothing more than hate groups and Marxist supremacists. The uptick in violence demonstrated by these totalitarian terrorist organizations is undeniable in cap letters. NGOs, BLM, Antifa, hate groups, and undeniable are all in caps. And if a person wants you to, the things in caps letters probably register a little bit higher or a lot higher on your subconscious. I'm just saying. So you don't want to put the things out there that you're trying to, terrorist organizations is just undeniable as the foreign money fund into them by oligarchs of the DNC. And then the person reposts their original. Here, communist and Marxist supremacist hate groups funded by foreign money, healed. The person didn't know how to spell funneled. So I was going to say that this was a bot, but they misspelled funneled, healed, into bogus NGOs. The Communist Democratic Party are the single largest threat to the American Republic. Now, I think this is a volunteer because of the misspelled word and some of the, either that or it could just be some, disinformation shill. But how do you show up on my channel, right? Like, it's just so fucking remedial. But then there was this one from somebody. Wow. So this person, like, when somebody comments a lot or has been subscribed for a while, they have these little icons next to their name. And this person, I've never seen a comment from them before. I don't recognize their name. I've seen over 1 million comments, but it's not somebody I recognize. So this person says, 3920. Wow, you're not as awake as I thought you were, Paul. You said neocons. Who are the neocons? You don't know who the neocons are? Like, they're actual neocons. It's a group of people who are the neoconservatives. Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld were kind of their leaders, but they had a whole bunch of other people. And they pushed the 9/11 bullshit narrative, and they pushed for all those illegal wars. And Dick Cheney was making bank because he used to be the CEO of that fucking company, whatever it was called, Halliburton. He made at least $80 million or more from his pushing for reconstruction of the bullshit wars that we perpetrated there. And the neocons very recently, and this is something that RFK Jr. even said, were George W. Bush's foreign policy. They came back into play, and they're the guys who pushed for war with Ukraine. Joe Biden. Joe Biden made a deal with the neocons, and I think they agreed to fuck Trump over in the election if they got to run his foreign policy. So he hired all, that guy Blinken and all those guys were new neocons. And whatever that guy's name is, John Bolton, porn stash John Bolton, he was one of the biggest neocons. They were the ones who were very pro-Israel. And so you don't even know what that is? Like, you don't think that's a real fucking thing? You think I'm not as awake because I believe in neocons? I believe in the neoconservatives. That is a real fucking group that, they would be considered the deep state if you were a real truther. They're like deep state guys. They're very pro-war. They're very pro-Israel. And they were like neoconservatives. They weren't really conservative at all. They spent a lot of money. They got America involved in a lot of foreign conflicts. And they were saying shit like New World Order, like George H. Walker Bush. They're all George H. Walker Bush people. Those are the neoconservatives. And so you can say they don't exist, but fuck, they totally do, right? You said who are the neocons? Who are the neocons? And then you talk about the hippie movement. The entire 60s counterculture movement was a psyop, and the same people are behind every psyop, but you won't call them out. I call out all the whole thing as a show. Like the whole thing is a show for your benefit, all of it, right? So I call it in a way that, none of these other guys do because you only call one side of it. But again, why is this person here, right? You didn't call them out on it. It may have taken him a long time to get there, but Charlie Kirk called them out and they deleted him for it. So when are you going to get there? This is why I'm talking about this comment. This person thinks they're ahead of me in terms of their level of consciousness. I know there's many levels spiritually above where I am from the Sagemark teachings and some of the things I've experienced. I've tasted levels of spirituality that are far beyond, where I am. Like I've been able to be gifted with spiritual experiences of higher up stages. It's part of the brilliance of the Sagemark system. You get to taste the, your ultimate spiritual connection to God, where you negate your ego and you merge back into the source, which is called the central region in the Sagemark system. And you get to have experiences of it and other different states of consciousness that are above where you are. So it motivates you to move forward. And it humbles you to realize that you're not there. So, I haven't made it, right? I'm not coming from a position where I've made it. I know, that there's a lot farther for me to go. But I know this guy is many levels below me. It's like a kindergartner trying to talk shit to you, all they have is a kindergarten education. Now, they might be brilliant later on, but right now they're in kindergarten. And this motherfucker thinks he's ahead of me because I'm not blaming the hippies for Charlie Kirk's death. Now, the hippie movement was like every other movement. It was politicized and it was co-opted. But what it was young kids who realized that their religion was bullshit. Like that was part of it. And the religious culture, the Christians the Christian culture that, make America great again, was bullshit. And there was embedded in it, white supremacy, racism, and all kinds of other things that weren't cool. And so the hippie movement brought in health foods, organic foods, and awareness of chemicals and environmental shit. That has been really important. The APA has been really important too, even though it's a corrupt governmental organization. Go to countries that don't have an EPA. Go to India and go to China and watch the fucking pollution there, because companies can do whatever the fuck they want and people can't sue them. And so go to these countries where it doesn't exist, right? You limited motherfucker, right? You don't even know what exists out there. There was a foreign minister in China, and he said that the water was completely healthy. The water had been dumped, all these companies dumped chemicals in the water. And somebody offered him $100,000, this is some years ago, if he would drink a shot glass worth of water. And he said no, because he'd fucking die, right? Like it wasn't worth $100,000. And so, because these things are all corrupt and people are, just shitty and just, but you have all of these things. So the hippie movement did have some benefits. We all benefit from the hippie movement. There's people who complain about Jews all the time. And I say, think about all the inventions and things that are in your life that have been invented by Jewish people. Like all these groups, all these different demographics have brought things of quality that you're not aware of. There's been inventions and there's been discoveries from all over the world that you benefit from various people, from men and women and all kinds of different people all over the world. And it's not like, everybody's a non-contributing motherfucker and like everybody sucks, but you and your group, right? Like you have a world of people that have contributed to the collective. But also, more importantly, because it's more, it's more prevalent, the downside. Every country has bullshit things that they believe, rituals that they do, demonic shit that they do, right? Like those rabbis who suck the penises of babies after circumcising them, like fucking weird shit, right? Ritualistic things, prejudice, crime. There's a mafia. There's every country has their own crime groups that come into America, right? Russian mob and these other, of course, Italian, Sicilian, these various groups, Irish criminals, all these different ethnicities from all the Chinese triads, like all these different gangs and groups that come in. And Master Chargy, who came to America and would just nail the culture, he said, America could have been like the greatest place because all these people, like you have all these different foods and you have all these good things. If everybody brought their best and everybody celebrated their best from their country, America would be this wonderful place where you would have the best of everything from all over the world. And, to a little extent, we have that. But mostly what we have is the worst. You said mostly what you have is the worst of the worst from all over the world. Like it becomes everybody gets degraded in there. They're bringing in their own specific perversions from all over the globe and having it all be here, right? And so, the hippie movement had its merits. I don't know if the neocon movement had its merits. But the bottom line is, you guys never look at yourselves. I mean, the left never looks at themselves and the right wing never looks at themselves. You never look at, what you have to change. And in any relationship, when you have a divorce, when you have a bad relationship, you have to figure out what your participation, as much as my ex was like crazy and like had issues, there was, I realized I was in that relationship for a reason. That it wasn't some accident. Like I had to learn and grow and develop. And that relationship, as bad as it was, benefited me, right? Because I changed. I realized I had to change and it helped me change. So there's great things about it, even though it was fucking horrific. It was brutal. And you have these things. And if you don't learn about yourself and you don't, figure out the things that you need, that God is showing you, every day God shows you what you need to change. And if you don't listen, then you're going in the wrong fucking direction then. You're externalizing your enemy and blaming something that has no chance of changing. When I say the people who are obsessed with the elite, I call them controllers. But the people who run the system behind the shadow government and all the people involved in politics, all the people with power, all the people that are called the elite, Hollywood elite and political elite and money elite, all the elite. People say it's the elite. The elite are like the worst fucking people. And they're people that are most incapable of changing. And if you're waiting for them to change, or you think that they can be killed and then you take their place, anybody who takes their place is going to become just like them. They're the worst of the worst. So constantly thinking that you're going to, that you have to take them down and replace them is a silly, that's never going to work. Like, it's not the people who are in power. It's the corrupt system, and it's what power does to people, that kind of power, political power, money power, that is always going to be the issue. And so you have a much better chance of changing, the people who aren't in the so-called elite classes. And so if you're not willing to change, why do you think they're going to fucking change? And you think you're going to pressure them to change when you don't even want to change yourself, right? And so, this is the kind of Pockets of the Future 101. Like, this is about the futility of the truth movement. By just digging through the garbage and trying to come up with some explanation that's more truthful than the official narrative and putting it out on the internet, you think that's going to change anything? You think having a tantrum and protesting is going to change anything? You think violence is going to change anything, right? So, like I was saying about Candace Owens in the first thing when she said this is a battle between good and evil, if your idea is that good is going to somehow win over the system and change the system, that's fucked. Like, it's not going to happen. There's no logical way there's no pathway to victory. So if God is here to give you an opportunity, if there's a real battle for good and evil, the only one that you can change is yourself, right? You can't change other people. And so God is giving you an opportunity to battle the evil within yourself and win. You can battle the evil inside yourself and win, but you don't want to take on that battle because you like the evil. Most people are gravitating to the evil within, the negativity, the hatred, the jealousy, the hedonism, the lethargy, and people don't want to go in front of God. People are like, oh, I'll go in front of St. Peter when I die. Like, I'll never. People don't want to go in front of God. Why not? God's right there with you. God's everywhere. God's the easiest being to connect with in the universe. God is completely 100% love. There's no judgment in God. There's no negativity. God doesn't have a mind. God just loves you unconditionally. And you don't want to go to God because once you go to God, you know what a piece of shit you are. Not because God's telling you, because when you connect with God, you see it. Master Charji made a great observation about Christians. He went to Christian schools. He grew up and went to Oxford. He went to these schools that were Christian-oriented in India. And he had read the Bible, and he was St. Paul in a previous life, right? So he had a connection there. And he said, the thing about Christians are they don't want to go to God. They want to get the Son. Like, the Son is like, it's like you go to your boss's son. You're scared to talk to your boss, so you talk to your boss's son, so he'll talk to his dad for you, right? Your boss scares you. People in the West are scared of God, so they want to go to, hey, Jesus, can you ask God to do something for me? This kind of thing. Because they don't want to go in front of God. And that's a brilliant observation, because once you go in front of God, then you have to change, right? You have to, there's something that you have to do. You might go into God, oh, God, can you kill my enemy? Or can you make these other people suffer? And God would be like, well, what the fuck's wrong with you? And, and God would say those words, it would show you. God would show you. The ideas would come to you, like, automatically. If you ask God a question, God will answer you in your own language and your own ability to understand. And then you're like, fuck, I have to change, right? And nobody wants to hear that shit. Anyways, I'm starting to tire out here. But you get the idea. Or maybe you don't. It's not my problem. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Parabano Desolate reported for the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.